Hello, this is Bob,
And this is Archie.
and this is another episode of Bob and Archie Talk Life in High Tech. Today, we're going to talk about collaboration. Good. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay. So I guess I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about what technical writers generally face, at least used to face. I have retired, so I'm a little bit out of the loop. But in the past,
Yeah, we can talk about retirement. I'm not retired yet.
well, I will say that it was just 2 months ago, so it's not like I've been retired forever. But basically, in the old days, or at least I'm gonna say 15 years ago. Let's put a timeline stake.
Okay.
A lot of technical writers would come at. Most companies didn't really understand technical writers, and a lot of technical writers didn't even understand what their role in a product development was. And so some of us have made up our own roles, and others have kind of, depending on your personality, you either end up just getting told what to do, or you create a job for yourself. And that's the way it used to be. So
Yeah.
as a result, there's this big split between the kind of people who create jobs for themselves and the kind of people who don't. And I think it's always a battle where you have, I mean, I'll just one little story. I came into one place and there were three writers there before I showed up. And within a couple of months, I had engineering eating out of my hands, and I was telling them what to do and all that stuff. And people got upset. Like, they won't listen to me. Why are they listening to you?
Yeah, it's a common story for both of us.
Yeah. So so I think what we're going to kind of be talking about is strategies for establishing yourself and then becoming a collaborator. And when I think when we first talked about this, we talked about collaborating with engineering, but it's not just engineering. It's the entire product team, and that includes engineering.
Yeah, it includes marketing, includes testing, includes, everything.
Everything, even service and everything.
So it's not about collaborating with members of your own team. It's about collaborating with the whole team to get a product out or to achieve a goal.
That's right. And if you're lucky, and I think I've only had this once, where basically everybody involved with the product was in one building. Meaning you had software engineering, you had mechanical engineering, you had what was the other one? Electrical engineering, service, marketing. Everybody was all in the same building, so it was just walking around talking to people, and it was great.
Yeah, that was more last century.
Yeah, probably right.
Or pre-COVID, anyways.
Yeah.
Things have changed quite a
I'm
bit.
trying to think. That was 2010, from 2006, 2010, something like that. That's a while ago. Yeah.
We've been around.
Yeah.
All right, let's start off with talking about, the way it used to be. I remember when I first became a writer, it was, I had a strong engineering background. Well, maybe not so strong, but it was a good engineering background. I had familiarity.
You understood tech.
Yes, I understood what was going on. And so that already made me different. Technical writers were not necessarily, and most likely were not technical. So we started off with just engineering dictating.
And just a little point of history. There was a period where I think in Boston and New York and a lot of the bigger cities, they had big budget crunches, and they ended up firing a lot of teachers. And a lot of those teachers ended up becoming technical writers.
Yeah. My first group of technical writers were ex-teachers.
Exactly. And they tended not to be very technical. So.
But they knew their English.
Exactly.
I mean, I learned a lot on grammar, and it was great.
It's an important part of the job.
But as time goes on, it was good to become part of that whole project team, to give input, to contribute to the success of the product. And that's really what collaboration for this topic is all about. It's about collaborating, working together as a team from the different types of areas of expertise, and then, further in the product. Now, one of my first examples of that was I was working for Honeywell way back when, and I was a hardware writer, which meant I was working on actually how you built a computer, and they were big back then, and the frameworks, the cases, we're talking about nuts, bolts, railings, everything. And so I strongly suggested that I wanted to see this in action. And I did. And then we got some great input. And once I saw things, I had some ideas. Go, gee, that seems a little inefficient. What if we did something a little different here? And oh, by the way, the instructions tell me to open up this case, rip open the thing, and then take out the document that I'm reading. And I thought, I'm not going to do that.
All right, skip that step.
Yeah, and so I actually had to fight to take that out.
And again, just kind of a historical perspective, a lot of the writing back then, actually, like I said, going to at least 15 years ago, engineers were kind of, again, the kind of stuff we worked on were engineering driven companies. So engineers were the king of the roost. Everybody else kind of like gave into engineering. So and engineers did most of the writing too. I mean, if they wrote the product descriptions, they sometimes wrote the user manuals, and depending on the technical writers available, those technical writers, their job would be to take that material and make it readable and usable. Some of them did that well. A lot of them didn't. A lot of them just edited the work. So it's taken a while to get where we are now, where it's a little bit more of a collaboration between engineering, technical writing, and usability.
Well, the whole career path of engineers has changed. It's transitioned over time. I mean, engineers are no longer the king as they were way back when.
Okay.
And I would say that, it's more product management, which we didn't have as much before. I mean, they were there, but now it's people driving it. It's marketing saying, gee, we need these things. It's customer support going out and saying other things. So the role of engineers has, as far as its influence, has decreased in that perspective.
And I think that's actually a good thing, because I remember a lot of those products that were purely engineering driven. And you're right, the project managers existed, but they also capitulated to engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, their job seemed to be to say, have you forgotten this? You're going to need to do this before we can ship this product. And engineering's like, And then when the product slipped, they said, okay, I guess we do need to do that.
Yeah. So I'm going to give two examples of what happened way back when I was a brand new writer. I was doing this thing, and I wrote up this document, and one engineer just, I think he had his own problems, but he started yelling at me to write in the King's English. And I think I might have talked about this before, but at the time I was thinking the King's English. We're Americans, but but the other engineers, they walked away, and it was like I was busted. I felt like a little kid, being schooled by a teacher and biting my lip and not trying to go back, because I know that the repercussions were pretty bad. But got around that now. Fast forward, this happened very recently. I'm talking to the engineering group and the engineering manager, and I'm saying, okay, guys, you've got this, what we call an API document, which is a list of all the commands you can do. Now, engineering writes this because they develop the commands. They have to tell you what the commands are and what they do. And so they write up this document. It's called the specification. And I said, guys, we need to update this, and we need to get some more descriptions in here. And the engineering manager looked at me over Zoom, and he said, we don't know anything about documentation. We're hoping you could tell us.
Well, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
But that just shows how much things have changed since then and now.
Yeah, engineering in the past would never really say something like that. They would never admit that they didn't know something.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely not.
So back into the collaboration thing. Not only are we technical writers, but we understand the product from our point of view, which is usually a user point of view, because we have to talk to them. Essentially, we're writing for the users. We're not writing for engineering. Right. Way back when, we wrote for engineering. If they didn't like it.
And the API, the API space, because I know you do a lot of API work.
Actually, I don't do that much.
Oh, good. Okay. Because in my life, I've avoided API like the plague. And I used to always say to people, it's like, why would you put an English speaker between two Frenchmen and tell them to translate? And that's what I feel what API documentation is.
Engineering to engineering.
Engineering to engineering. They stick a technical writer in the middle of it. They don't know anything, right? No. So,
Okay, for all you people out there, programmers would need to know the API spec. Right. They need to know the commands so they can write a script, so they can use these commands, so they can actually achieve a function or whatever they're trying to do. And so it's really, you're right, in engineering, talk to engineering. However, programmers are, don't want to sound mean or anything, but I don't want to say less skilled, but we have a
In
lot
terms of
of
writing?
people.
Yeah.
No, not just in terms of writing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, everybody's more specialized.
Okay.
So the writer comes in with the API spec, and in my part of my collaboration is that, and now I'm saying, okay, you are trying to accomplish this set of tasks. You are trying to do this area of work. I'm going to tell you which commands you need to go look up.
Okay.
And so this is the area you need to be working in. This is the order you need to do them in. So I'm sticking up for API writing a little bit.
Well, like I said, I mean, I remember I went to one company where I made it clear to them. I said, I don't like API writing. I don't want to do it. Right. And they said, oh, no, this, API is maybe 2 to 10% of what you're going to be doing. After I was on the job, it became 90% of what I was doing. And it was terrible. And I told them, I said, look, I told you I hate this stuff. I don't want to do it. So,
now, in case anybody hasn't figured it out, Archie is not a big fan of doing API writing or doing, programming writing or anything like that. Though he does program.
I don't know how to program, but I just...
He does not want to do those type of things.
Yeah,
which,
I just, In other words, what the traditional definition of a technical writer is taking technical information from technical people and translating it for non-technical people, the users. When you start talking about engineer-to-engineer communications, I would say that we talk about engineering writers. An engineer, a software engineer who can write would be the best candidate to do APIs.
Yes. And that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Technical writing has split into so many specialties, areas of expertise, just like engineering has. Anyways, we're getting away from collaboration a little bit.
I mean, it's all part of, it's all part of the same whole in that, ultimately, if you talk about strategies, like the last company I worked for before I retired, when I first got there,
You said retired again. I'm not. Don't come on. Cut it out.
I'm a very happy man now that I don't have to. Well, anyway,
He's rubbing it in.
So I'm sitting in so I'm a new guy. And again, only probably the engineering manager is the only person who saw my resume. So the people on the team had no idea who I was or what I could do, right? I'm the technical writer, right? So we're sitting in a meeting and they're talking about, so for this update of this product, we're going to add a new computer. We're going to add an additional computer. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to add this product. We're going to add this piece of hardware and that piece of hardware. And I'm making faces and I'm like, does the existing power supply have enough headroom for you to add all that stuff? And I go, oh, no. We're going to add a switch. We're going to add a new power supply. We're going to have a switch so you can switch over to this different.
You asked a technical question.
Exactly. So again, it's an innocent question, but at the same time, what I'm establishing is that I know exactly what you're doing, and I understand some of the engineering issues that you have to deal with, because I was looking for an answer to that question, and I probably would end up asking that question at some point anyway. But that's a way of establishing. So now they knew that I wasn't a non-technical person, that they could talk to me the way they talk to other engineers, and I'd be fine with it.
Yes.
So that's just a simple thing in terms of establishing yourself.
And you brought back a very good point, like we talked about. At the very beginning, a lot of technical writers were teachers, and they didn't understand the product at all. Right. And now most technical writers are very technical.
They may be going overboard the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they're too technical, and they use the user focus, which is bad too.
Exactly. Because, the problem is, and this is really the whole, where our value comes in as writers, is technical writers, is that the engineers assume a lot of knowledge on the point of the user. A lot, everybody's read documentation where they're saying do this, and you're just like, what are you talking about, right? Because I don't know anything about this. And so, one software company I worked for, they used to talk about a Harrison flag, and the reason they called it that is because they build the software and it's like, oh, we got this version and we're testing it, and they give it to me to do the documentation, and after 5 minutes I blow it up. Like, what did you do? I said, I'm just looking around to see how this thing works, and it failed. And so they started to call it that because I would break their software all the time. So
yeah, I did a lot of that too. I actually broke hardware. Got yelled at for it. Hey, we're going to demo it to the executives. You broke it. I shouldn't have been able to break it.
Yeah, and so so it's just this whole thing about establishing your credibility, making sure that engineering knows who they're talking about, So I remember I was talking to this one writer in Chicago, I think it was, and I guess she was her dad was like a TV repairman or something like that. So she had the unique characteristic that she knew what a capacitor was and what a resistor was and how power supplies worked, which is, again, most technical writers do not know that.
I think most people don't know that anymore.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And I learned it from my dad because, back in the old days, your TV goes bad, you open up, you pull the tubes, you take it down to the electronics store, they test the tubes. And if you have a bad tube, they give you a new one and you go and put it all back and you're all set.
There you go.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I got my because I don't have any fear about opening stuff up and fixing it. I've taken 600 volt flyback voltage when I was trying to fix a TV once. So yeah, I have no fear of that stuff. So
Yeah, I saw a guy go halfway across the room.
fortunately, my cousin was behind me, so he got the brunt of my coming back at full speed. So
anyways,
yeah.
As part of being a technical writer, we contribute
Yes.
to the development of a product, and that's what real collaboration is all about.
That's right.
We bring our expertise. We look at nuances, and we try to give some input, saying, "Gee, our user is not as experienced as you think." And I think today it is even more important to note that. I think in the beginning, computers were built for engineers and for very, very sophisticated people.
Right.
Today, anybody can have one.
Yeah. But even back then, like the sophistication of the products and the computers, unless you were working on it, it's going to be.
They still didn't know.
They still didn't know. Right.
But you still had a background that we could count on. Today we can't. Anybody can be in IT.
Right.
I mean, they're very well trained people, and so I, for example, use a layered documentation.
Okay.
And what I mean is that, gee, you're a new guy and you coming in, and you really don't know the product or even your job that well.
Right.
So I consider you, very naive, inexperienced, and you will learn. I write documentation for those type of people. Don't go here, don't go there. I don't say it that way, but here's what you need to know. Focus here, and as you learn more, go here. Oh, by the way, you're the IT administrator. Yeah, you got a serious background. These are the things you need to know to set up your naive users. And I write the documentation there, and I make sure that they know what I'm talking about. I don't munge it all together.
Well, one of the things, and I'm one of these people. This is one of my little bugaboos is the overuse of acronyms. I saw an ad the other day that's it said I forget what the acronym was, but it said, "Oh, this thing is going to be better than that thing." I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? They just assumed that I knew what that acronym was, and I had no idea. And that was the whole ad. It's like,
Do you
okay,
know how many searches I do whenever I come across it?
it's ridiculous.
I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've been doing network security for a long time, and I come across, oh my God, that's another acronym.
Yeah, they just make it up on the fly. If a thing has more than 2 words, they make it into an acronym, and they think you're going to know it, just because you should.
Oh yeah. I get my stick out and beat up acronyms. I don't, unless it's an industry standard one,
And even then, because a lot of the industry standard acronyms, they duplicate other acronyms that in other industries. So you have to be real careful about saying, "Oh, everybody's going to know what that is." No, they might not. No. They might think it's something else. So I hate acronyms. So I'll just say that. State it plain. So
yeah, I'm careful to.
Yeah. Well, going back to your user advocate kind of thing. I always consider myself as a technical writer, as a user advocate. Okay, I'm the guy who's talking to the user. I'm talking to you guys, but I'm also talking to the user. Back when I was a manager, I sold my technical writers. This is before usability became a thing that everybody knew about. They didn't have usability engineers. Engineers were doing everything, and it's kind of like it was so convoluted. It was terrible. Okay, because I had nobody. I think I told this story before, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah. See our previous episode for some bad products.
Yeah, I mean, I sat down with the lead engineer on this product, and I asked him, so what's a day in the life of a network manager?
Nope.
Yep.
Crickets.
1, 2, 3. Yeah. Like, okay. So then I understood. It's like, you have no friggin' idea. So, and this is the guy who's leading the project. He's the one who's putting this whole thing together. So you've got all this stuff of functions and things that they think people need, but they really have no idea.
But it's cool. I mean, it's really cool. We can do that.
So,
do you know how many products have cool stuff that nobody really cared about?
I feel that way about Windows. You know, they say, "Oh, we got this big update," and then there's this new thing in there. It's like, okay, what is this for?
Yeah.
I don't need it. So,
Why'd you change that?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but getting back to bringing that user experience back into product development. Now, I was just talking about the advanced part, people that are going to be setting up certain things for their IT people. We have the less experienced people who just need to monitor things. Just show me the data, help me understand it so I can go off and do my job. And what I try to do is, as part of my collaboration, I come back to the product team and I say, we need to separate this a little bit more in the user interface. So when the product comes out, this is what you need to do, and not clutter it with other things. Try to keep them separate, keep it simple. That is part of my design input. One of the things that I just recently did was I created a video, and it was all about what we call onboarding. You're brand new, and here's what you need to know so you can, in 10 minutes, you can figure out what you need to do. They wanted to put more things in there. I took them out. And I say, no, let's focus on the naive user. And by the way, I'm creating other videos for advanced users once you get that. Now I'm talking to the UI designer, and she is actually incorporating that type of intelligence into the user interface and has focused on the different types of groups. And I found that very rewarding.
I'll tell you this story because this is actually kind of funny. Again, it's a user advocacy thing, and I was working with limited information about my user. I was doing a manufacturing document, and this is basically building a hardware device. And so, one of the big revelations about medical devices is that they're all handmade. That's partly why they're so expensive. There's a guy who sits there and builds this thing, right? And so I was writing the document to tell this guy how to build this thing, and what I ended up doing, because they handed me a binder full of notes, and this is how they train their line guys. They had a bunch of scribbles on a page in a notebook, and basically the guy who was building it would go and talk to the engineer if he didn't understand something.
Right.
And of course, that is not acceptable to the FDA.
Yes.
By the way,
FDA comes in and says, "Where's your documentation? Can you do this again and again,
exactly
the same way every time?" And no.
So my job was to build that document, and after looking at those notes, I said, "Okay, I'm going to start from scratch." I went to the guy, the manufacturing head, and said, "Look, I want to sit down with one of you guys and go from the very start to the finish and just follow the whole process through to the end, so I can write this thing up." And that's what I ended up doing. Now, the learning was, okay, so even though I was working with this guy, the part of the definition of the user in this case, which is a manufacturing engineer, that I didn't understand, because what I ended up doing, I did a layered document just like you're talking about. Okay, so so the first time you do this, you need to go through this thing step by step and get all these details. But you do it 2 or 3 times, maybe 5 times. You just want to jump around to things that you might have forgot. You don't want to have to pull through all this crap. You want to be able to jump to this part, jump to that part. So what I did is I built it as an HTML document, something that could be presented on a screen with with tabs.
Basically a web page.
Yeah,
for all you
basically
people
a
don't know
web page.
HTML.
Right, the web page. But what I learned was that the reason they don't give manufacturing engineers computers is because they end up just looking at porn and doing all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't be doing on a computer. So it's
that's a different problem.
Yeah.
We're not collaborating on that one.
But the thing is, it was a piece of information about the user that I didn't have. Because if I knew that, I wouldn't have done it that way, right? So anyway, that's why it's so important to understand your users really thoroughly.
I wonder if that still happens today. I mean, that happened quite a bit when the internet was fairly new.
Well, I told you I fired a guy who spent all day doing porn. So yeah, I think it probably still happens. Because I'll bet that guy got another job after I fired him. He interviewed really well.
No, with IT and stuff like that, a lot of things are screened. I think.
Well,
I think it's less of a problem.
Here's the way it works. They don't monitor your everyday thing. That's impossible with all these employees. But if somebody says, "Well, wait a minute, this guy isn't doing any work. Why?" You can ask IT to trace. This is what I did. Ask IT to trace. What is he looking at? Then we saw all this stuff. So that otherwise we wouldn't have known.
I could tell some more funny stories. But we gotta go off that. So anyways, we're going to switch to marketing, which, the point, I guess, kind of fits into that. But anyways, collaborating with marketing. We've been really focused on engineering.
Right. Because that's you spend
That's
most of your time.
yes.
Yeah.
But marketing has an awful lot to do with how the product is seen initially.
Right.
And so one of the things, and I just did this again, is I wrote a whole topic. I went over to how marketing is presenting this product. Hey, it's got this whiz bang feature and it's going to do these wonderful things for you. And it comes with a box of chocolates and it's wonderful. Oh my God. And then you get to the documentation and you're saying, well, where's the box of chocolates? Where's these wonderful things? I don't understand. I'm just telling me how to run the product. So I always connect my documentation to marketing. So I just wrote a whole article on using marketing speak, saying, gee, they're telling you these wonderful things. And actually, this particular marketing group is pretty good. So they're very good at hitting all the right words, and the real world tasks. And so I take those tasks and then I define them. And then I say, if you're doing this type of task, this is the area of the product you want to go to. That's the connection. And this time I didn't need to influence marketing, but in previous places, I actually had to, because they were marketing things. And I'd go up to them and I'm saying, I know all about this product. I've written all this stuff up about this product, and I have no idea what you're talking about. And that has happened quite a bit. And so I would go back and say, we need to be on the same page. First of all, there was one group that looked at me like I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, the company failed because they were trying to sell something that really didn't exist.
No,
So that was
yeah.
my collaboration, was making sure we're all on the same page, going back to marketing, and that we are speaking the same things and that we talk to each other.
And this was, I may have talked about this before. I had proposed this business of putting all information under one person for just that reason, because you're the hero model, right? I always talk about the hero model, where you've got an
I'm a
extraordinary
hero?
well, you've got an extraordinary technical writer or some other person who knows what you're talking about and does all those things and connects all those dots and makes sure everybody's on the same page. But if you didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. That's my point. It's
In
not
some places, yes.
Yeah, it's not a
Most places,
it's
yes.
not a prescribed process to make sure that collaboration happens. So it relies on some extraordinary individual to do it, and it shouldn't be that way.
I'm feeling all sorts of compliments coming my way. I feel the love. This is great. I love it.
Well, I mean, I do the same thing. You try to connect.
Yes,
the
you
dots.
do. Yes,
Yeah,
you do.
if I see a disconnect, I'll connect it. But yeah, nobody ever bought the idea of putting all the information pieces under one person. So I would think marketing, technical documentation, support, service, all that stuff should really be under
QA,
one
which
manager.
is testing.
Well, QA is
Oh,
is not customer facing.
It's not customer facing, but it's an important part.
It is
One of the
but,
things
yeah.
I've collaborated with writing tests. Now, one of the things I would do is, of course, you have the test that's saying product does X. You do this function, you're going to get this result. Okay, make sure that it does it in all these circumstances. Great. These are the type of testing that you have to make sure there's no bugs. But I also work with them to make sure that, well, the user's going to do this, this, and this. Okay. And some things you might not expect. Test for those. And so I've written up tests. I've had these things tested, or I'll do my own ad hoc testing. I'll put in garbage in a field because it can happen. And I found a lot of bugs that way before I went out.
Oh, yeah.
And so my influence would be back to the QA testing, make sure you test these types of things too.
Now, in terms of what I was talking about before, though, I was really wanted to consolidate all the customer-facing messages. Because like you said, sometimes marketing says that it can do something, but they haven't really talked to the documenters or to the engineers. So there's that disconnect.
Well, yeah, that's bad marketing, actually.
Right. So if anything that's customer-facing is what I wanted to bring together. Something like what you were just talking about with testing. That's kind of a intra-engineering kind of function.
QA tends to be
it's not a customer-facing
a department subservient to engineering.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, I never got anywhere with it. And in fact, I went on one interview where they were. I talked about this, and the first question the engineers, have you ever done that anywhere? I said, well, no, but I've gotten parts of it done. And I'm just trying to tell you what my vision is. I don't expect to get it all done because I know people are very, very protective of their fiefdoms. So I get that.
Yeah, there's those.
Yeah.
But there's also an awful lot of information too, which can be very, very difficult. So again, now the interesting thing that we just brought up is that the collaboration for the product development, but it's not just the actual software package or the hardware package, whatever. It's not the actual product, but it's all the trappings around it. It's the marketing speech. It's the brochures. It's how we present things at
Training.
yeah, training.
Yeah.
Training is that too.
Mm-hmm.
Various tech shows.
Mm-hmm.
How we present ourselves, not just the company, but the product itself. All that is part of what I would consider the product.
All right.
It's more than just the product, it's also everything like that. And as information engineers, as that we like to sometimes call ourselves, or
Yep.
information designers, we are very focused on all that information and making sure it connects and making sure that it all talks to each other. And that is the role that I've done several times. And that is also part of what I bring to the table in a product development process. Gee, have we thought about this? Is the user experience in here? Some companies are very good and they've got all that in place.
Right.
And
Right.
it makes my job so much easier. I just sit down and say, great, write things up and make sure everything's talking to what they've already got established.
Well,
Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Well, I will tell you, the big learning for me was, okay, so all those years where I was trying to bring all these things together and fighting that battle, then when I got into medical devices, they've been doing that all along.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have to. Because they have to. So
Regulatory.
yeah, all of the usability stuff is built into there. All of the connections between all the different pieces of information. You have to prove that what you designed is what the user can use. You have to prove that to the FDA in order for your product to be released. So they have all kinds of elaborate things. It's all built in. So what I was talking to you about is in most software companies that are not regulated, they don't do that. Some do, but many of them don't because they can't afford it. I mean, these medical devices are selling for $2 million a pop, so they can afford to do all of that. They have to do it.
Well, they have to do it.
They have to do it, and the cost gets passed on to the consumers and to the hospitals. So,
which is another topic.
Yeah. But it's in regular software and hardware building, they don't. If they're not regulated, they don't have to do that. They try to do it, but if they can't afford it, they won't.
Now, one of the things with startups. Now, I work almost exclusively with startups now, which is great because all the things I've said falls flat because if I'm working with a startup and they just not even have a customer yet.
Right.
But they have people that are looking at things. And so the product evolves quickly. It's like, wow, we thought we were going to do this and this, but nobody likes it or they don't understand it. And then we have to turn on a dime. In fact, I'm redesigning this whole information system that I just wrote up.
Now, do you like that?
It is part of the process. It's not a like or dislike.
Okay.
I know it's a startup. I know these things are going to happen, but they found a better approach, which was good for the product. So I take all the stuff that I've written, and I can use a lot of it, but I have to go back, redesign it, put a piece in here, take a piece out here, rewrite this piece, and make sure that I'm following the same approach. This is where they collaborate with me, and I have to react to that. And so I'm just going back and saying, okay, the approach I took was really good, and it helped us, but now it's obsolete. We've taken another.
Right.
We've gone off in a slightly different direction, and now, thanks for giving me that input. Now I'm going to redesign everything, and off we go. So startups are interesting. I don't like rewriting myself too often. I hate updating documents. I'll be honest with you. But when we have this growth so early in the life cycle of a product, it's actually fascinating. And I'm finding that as the product matures in this startup world, so is my documents.
And the thing about it, I suppose that for someone like you, what's good about a startup is it's a small team in the beginning. So you have to collaborate. You have to be part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to be part of it. So it's very different when you walk into some of these larger corporations where everything's stovepiped. And you really have to work through those barriers to get people to understand that, wait a minute, what you're doing affects this, this, and this. So you need to make sure all these people know that you're doing that. And so, again, in most large corporations, the hero model prevails. Unless I do it, nobody will do it. And then they'll find out at the end that everything's all screwed up, So.
Well, when you get to incredibly huge corporations, it's almost impossible to effect a change like that.
Yeah, like I said, the fiefdoms, you've got some manager, and again, I don't know if this is still true, but in the old days, managers used to rate themselves by how many people they had and how much money, how big their budgets were, and all this other stuff. So they're very, very protective of that.
Well, when you
Yeah.
find huge corporations that have been around for a long time, I mean, there's a lot of that
Yeah.
thinking still there. There's a lot of that left over.
So it becomes very difficult. Like I said, you do it on a personal level. You just
Yeah.
talk to the people who are actually doing the work and get them to talk to you.
Well, in a large corporation, I always keep my focus on my team. I mean, large corporations is like thousands of teams.
Exactly. It's a lot of teams. So you have a team, but your team may not include, let's say, service or let's say
Marketing or anything like that,
training.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't worry about that because I know I can't affect it.
But you can if you wanted to.
Well, if I bash my head against the walls, I throw my stuff out there.
Yep.
But sometimes you just have to keep your focus on what you can do and just deal with the rest.
Okay. I mean,
It's good for my sanity.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna fail, I like to fail big. So the idea is to go out there and get everybody on board. And if they tell you to get out of their office, fine. But at least you tried.
Yeah. Well, no. I like to succeed small sometimes.
Yeah. So I mean,
So what other areas do we collaborate in?
Well,
I'm trying to think of that. I mean, we just talked about testing. We talked about marketing.
well, I'll talk a little bit about service.
Service.
Okay. So
Or customer support is sometimes called.
yeah. Well, I mean, so okay. So this goes back to just establishing yourself as someone who knows things that they don't think you know. So when
You like doing that.
yeah, I love it. So we're building this medical device product, and we have no service documentation, none at all. And so and there was one guy on the phone, the one service guy on the phone who was answering phone all over the world. People from all over the world calling him, asking questions about this and that, and he had to come up with answers.
Yeah. Well,
And,
why don't you talk about that service guy? What was his role? What was he doing?
What do you mean?
Okay, so service, was he supporting, external customers, people who ran the product?
Yes.
Was he the only person that could answer these questions whenever they
He-
called him up when they had a problem?
He was the guy that the whole world turned to when they had a problem with the product.
Okay.
So he was support and he was service. I mean, I don't think did he ever go out on calls? He must have. Sometimes he disappears for a little while, so I think he sometimes went out on calls and did things.
Or just went down to the pub and had a few.
But yeah, but
It's a stressful job,
But what did I do? My approach was, okay, so this guy is very busy. So the last thing I can do is ask him to write something for me or lay out steps or anything. He doesn't have the time for that.
That
Right?
happens quite a bit,
Yeah.
not just that area.
Yeah. So what I did, okay, so the solution was for me is I went to the engineering manager, actually the guy above that, and I said, I need a system in my office. I need to get hands on with this thing. So he actually pulled one off the line. He got them to pull one off the line, a damaged one that they couldn't sell. And so I took it from my office, took it apart, put it back together. So I understood what the structure of the hardware was. Okay. And then I went to the service guy and I said, could you take this system and create a common fault? And I'll see if I can figure out how to fix it. So he did that. He had me a dead system. And I sat there and went through my own troubleshooting because I do a lot of troubleshooting on my own. So I went through my own little troubleshooting process. I figured it out, fixed it. And then I sat down with him after that and said, okay, here's my process. I wrote it up. Here's my process. Is there anything that you would change in this to make the person who's doing the troubleshooting get to this answer faster? And that's how we collaborated on that. So it made his life easy, and it established me as someone who really knew this stuff.
Yes.
Not intimidated at all.
And that, in general, I find that if I give somebody a lot of the information and keep them focused, I'll get a lot more input.
Right.
And say, hey, can you take a look at this 50-page document and tell me what you think? I think I don't have the time.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's an approach, because really and truly what technical writers, what engineering managers think that technical writers can do, and depending on their hire, they can or they can't, is to alleviate some of the burden on their engineers. And I took pride in the fact that I took very little time from engineering to do my job. I'd always ask them questions, just pop in their office. What about this? What about that? But I would never sit there and try to take hours of their time to do this or that. Never.
No, and they don't have the time to do that.
Don't have the
I mean,
time.
everybody's trying to get a product out. Yeah, that's happened to me a number of times, and I always get a big smile on my face when I say, "No, I just want to know this one little thing. I got the rest." And then they're so happy to tell me
Exactly.
because it's not a big waste of their time, and also they're talking to someone who understands what they're doing,
Right.
and that helps out a
Right.
lot.
Now, I have to admit that although I can program, a lot of the new programming techniques, like, what do they call it? C++ and some of the other programs. I don't necessarily understand that programming language. I was fascinated to find out my friend who I was going to ask to help us. Um, she still works in C. So if I saw her stuff, I would know exactly what they're doing because I understand C. But C++ is all, I forget what they call it, object-oriented programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily understand that because it's just really confusing to me. I probably could figure it out if I cared enough to take the time to learn it, but I never did. So.
But we don't normally get down to that level.
No. Well,
Not
if
normally.
if you do an API, you would,
Wow.
right?
To a point.
Okay.
I draw the line. It's just now it's too much of my time. Oh, also speaking of collaboration and taking people's time and stuff, when I write a big document, and I've done this again throughout my career, it's like, okay, person X, please look at section 1.2 because I know that you're good at that particular piece, and then I'll divvy everything up
Right.
so everybody's looking at a smaller piece, and I get the input I need.
Right. Again,
I'm giving back. The collaboration is
Yeah.
also saving people's time and being efficient.
Exactly. Because I mean, like I said, in companies where the engineers did all the writing, they would always complain about it because one, they weren't good at it. It's not something they're trained to do,
It took
and
too much of their
it took
time.
too much of their time.
Yep.
So it's a quality issue too, because if they're spending all their time writing, they're not programming and checking their work and all that stuff. Because well, even in writing, I'm just going to throw this in there because it's just one of my little bugaboos over the years. Is that okay? So all the corporations fired all their editors, right? So expect the writers to edit their own work, and of course that doesn't work, right? Because really and truly, okay,
It's like asking engineers to write all the documentation.
yeah. So I mean, I write a document, and if I'm by myself, theoretically, I put the document away, come back to it 2 days later, and look at it again, because then I'll see all the errors. But most of the time, you don't have time to do that, right? So as a result, a lot of errors get through. I mean, I always tell the story where I was managing a team. We were doing peer editing, which I hate, by the way. And so they had this document. They passed it around the department, and everybody looked at it. They put it on my desk as the last person to look at it before it gets approved. Error in the title. In the title. Okay, so it's like, okay. So yeah, peer editing doesn't work in my mind. It just doesn't.
And editing your own work. I mean, when you write something again and again, after a while, you can't see what's on the page.
Exactly.
In your mind. But
and professional editors used to read the copy backwards, so they didn't fall into that trap.
actually, I do some of that when I'm trying to look at for mistakes. I'll actually read from bottom up.
So if you have the time to do that,
it's one of the little tricks that the editors have taught me.
Yeah, I learned that
So I
from
use that.
I learned that from an editor as well. I don't do it because I'd rather just put it away for a little bit and come back to it
No,
fresh.
I do both
Yeah. So
when I have the time.
I don't know if I could. I don't know if I have the patience to read something backwards. Let's put it that way.
I tend to throw things out, and then while other people are looking at it, and go back and look at it again when after some time has passed. And, oh my God, I did that! But yeah, it happens.
Yep.
So just to sum things up, okay, so our collaboration is not just about with engineering or trying to us giving input. It's also making efficient use of our time, their time, giving input as well as getting input.
Right.
And working, and I think we brought that point up a number of times in other episodes that we're trying to make the product better. It's all about working together to achieve a common goal.
And again, the documentation is a key part of the user interface.
Yeah, and affects the user interface,
Yep.
and vice versa.
And vice versa.
So yeah, I think that's about all we need to say about collaboration for this time.
All right.
All right. So we're signing off, and we want to thank Matt, our recording engineer, and our guide and guru, for recording us. We want to thank Sterling-Lancaster Community Television for allowing us their studio and bringing you this podcast. And everybody, take care and have a great day.